While very tragic, were the deaths of the people at Astroworld a coincidence or a bad concert, or is it something deeper and more sinister? Hey everybody, it's FLF here again to dive into another what I think is a very wild and profound thing that we should be talking about. As you probably heard already, this past weekend, the 5th and the 6th, Astroworld kicked off in Houston, this concert with Travis Scott, and 8 people, looks like so far, have been dead. Or pronounced dead, and then 300 plus people have been injured. Initially hearing about this, I thought it was a really tragic thing, and it wasn't something that hit me to be like, okay, something sinister or creepy or evil is going on here. Really, I thought it was just a terrible thing, and I thought people had stampeded out and had potentially killed these people when they're stampeding out. But little by little, I started getting glimpses of some things that I thought might have been the case and weren't. So I thought people were getting stampeded, and it looks like people were actually getting pricked with a needle of some kind and dying. And halfway through the concert, I guess somebody went on stage and was saying there's dead people in the audience. So obviously, a couple of those things kind of alerted my thoughts to say, okay, what's going on here? I mean, it's one thing if people get stampeded, but it's another thing when people just suddenly die. But ultimately, that didn't really alarm me or make my ears perk up, so to speak, with anything sinister going on. One message in particular caught my attention. Someone was actually taking an Instagram story. They were taking down a poster of Travis Scott, and they posted this Instagram story, which I'm going to put up right here, where they say that essentially, in so many words, I was a fan of Travis Scott, but something was off about this concert, and they're hiding it in plain sight. So of course, with what I kind of do here, we expose darkness with the light of Christ, especially in hip hop and pop culture. I was like, okay, let's try and figure out what's going on here and if there's anything sinister that we need to kind of look into. As we go into this, I want to keep something in mind for everybody watching. I am not assuming or indicting or accusing anybody of anything. What I'm simply going to do is lay out evidence from what I found, looking into this a little bit further, and some historical information that I knew previously, and present that evidence as well. I'm not saying anything about Travis Scott, the people who put on the concert, or anything like that, but instead I'm just going to present some evidence, the things that we know, the facts that are true, and let people kind of make a decision around that. Until all the facts come out, I don't think we should jump to conclusions, but I think there's some very sinister and evil things going on that don't strike me as coincidence, but strike me in some ways as intentional. And when I say intentional, there's something to keep in mind. As a Christian, there's a spiritual war going on all around us at all times. Good angels and demons warring and fighting all the time for your very soul and the possession of it. So when I say that things are happening intentionally, really what I'm saying is that there are battles and forces that are unseen to us that can be inspiring actions and moving the hand in an invisible way that we don't notice. So just keep that in mind as we dive into this. The first thing I kind of want to talk about, which I think is important to lay that foundation, is Travis Scott himself as an artist and what his history looks like when he came onto the scene. So one thing that I've always been hypersensitive to when I came to Christ and I started seeing all this occultic messaging and really evil things happening in the music industry is that when a new artist comes on the scene, 9 times out of 10, if they're getting a major push by major labels, there's something sinister going on with their music. And I don't take that or say that lightly. And I'm also not saying that every single artist that comes out is an evil person. I'm more so saying that the music they put out, the visuals they put out, and the people that are curating those things together usually have very deep, sinister roots or evil roots, or even if you want to say not sinister or evil, but anti-Christ, not that they are the antichrist, but anti-Christ messages in a lot of their art. So when you get these people together and they produce something, the only result of that, you're going to know them by their fruit. It's going to be bad fruit, right? So when I saw Travis Scott come on the scene and started releasing all these songs, most notably Goosebumps and a few of his other tracks that really blew up, for example, doing songs with Drake and doing songs with Kendrick Lamar and these other really popular artists, what stood out to me was a couple of things. Right off the bat, his first album cover was him with black wings. And, I am very, very suspicious of any artist that comes out with any sort of wings or angel wings or something like that, primarily because I just immediately associate that with Lucifer or a fallen angel, which in many cases they try to communicate that message. So seeing him with that cover art with the wings, and also hearing some of the content of his songs like Goosebumps, where it's kind of an eerie song talking about love for someone who's not actually there, it really makes me step away from that kind of content. And I really don't want to expose myself to it. I don't want to become a fan of it. Also, seeing that he had a relationship with Kylie Jenner was kind of interesting, being tied into that Kardashian clan. I feel like anyone who's tied in with the Kardashians usually is either has access to the the elite, has access to very high people, or is involved in something kind of sinister. And again, I don't say these things lightly. I think in general, people can make their own decisions and do what they want. But when you start seeing these little pieces go together, it's kind of like an alarm that goes off for me. Like, okay, maybe something is going on here. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to try and stay away from it because it's not really going to be edifying to me to participate in this music or this art or whatever he's doing. Another key point for me is when he came out with his album Astroworld. So Astroworld was, I believe, his sophomore album, or if not his sophomore album, the following album. And it was released in 2018 and was kind of like a really big album for him. It's kind of when Travis Scott was becoming what I would say is a mega star, really getting a lot of attention internationally. He was, again, in his relationship with Kylie Jenner. And what stood out to me when he rolled out this project was the actual artwork and the project rollout. When I saw the cover Astroworld, it really reminded me of this artwork from a series of paintings by this artist, Albrecht Dürer. I don't want to say that wrong, but he was a German artist from about 1470 to 1490 who came out with work. And this Harrowing to Hell was one of his series that actually depicted a lot of really corrupt, evil looking things. And there's one particular painting that tied in really closely with Astroworld. And when I saw Astroworld, I was kind of like, whoa, this is sort of a very uncanny resemblance to what you were seeing in Harrowing to Hell to what the actual album was. And the idea was that you went through Travis Scott's mouth into this fun place, or into this theme park essentially called Astroworld. Looking at where the inspiration for this album came, this album art I should say came, it actually was from a photo by David LaChapelle. And David LaChapelle was instrumental in actually the design and art creation process of this album artwork. Now, of course, when you get an artist or you get a photographer who's working with you, I always want to see the other things that they have done in their catalog to kind of see what their theme of music has been. I did the exact same thing with The Weeknd when he came out with After Hours. The art curation was done by a couple of brothers who had very close ties with Satanism, cultic worship, and you just saw like how what they did and what they did previously played into The Weeknd's aesthetic and vibe for After Hours. The same is true here with David LaChapelle. If you look historically, David LaChapelle is kind of compared to Andy Warhol in a lot of ways, and that he takes pop culture and pop art and really amplifies it. One of the things I thought was interesting is he has a book of photographs, part of a 3-part series. It's a trilogy called Heaven to Hell. Now, in this trilogy of photos, you see a lot of very perverted things. I didn't go through all of it, but even seeing some of the pictures, I was like, what is going on here? And on top of that, you have other people reviewing it and saying it's one of the most perverse books that they've ever had in their collection. But what's interesting is you have a lot of biblical imagery being taken and misappropriated by David LaChapelle. One thing that stood out was the Last Supper, which was a big one, having the Last Supper being kind of perverted and turned into like this pop culture thing. Obviously, the Last Supper, even by Leonardo da Vinci, is probably not historically accurate at all, but the fact that we're taking biblical themes and biblical characters and putting them in. Another one that stood out is a picture of Rihanna kind of in a case in a vending machine, essentially, with pictures of Christ, a Catholic Christ on the right hand side. Again, not necessarily saying that Catholic Christ is historically accurate, but the idea is that you can purchase God, that idols are for sale. And this is just some of his work in that series called Heaven to Hell. Obviously there's tons of nudity, ton of perverse things. He's done other artwork for other artists as well, including a picture from this artist called Behold, where it literally looks like it's depicting a Christ-like representation of this particular artist. Really, David LaChapelle, to me, as far as what I can see, has a history of perverting the gospel and taking shots at God and Jesus Christ. So again, it wouldn't really be such a stretch to think that he's acquainted with the works of Albrecht Dürer and that somehow they tied in. I can't prove that, obviously, but again, I'm laying out these common themes that we're seeing and this common evidence that we're seeing, how all these different elements are tying together. While I won't say that Travis Scott has 100% autonomous control over his creation and over his work, he definitely has some input on what kind of stuff gets rolled out and what kind of art gets rolled out. So just having these different elements and components put together is really telling to me that, one, he's involved in some extent into making the decisions, and two, he's aware of some of the thoughts and some of the theology that goes into some of these decisions that he's making. For the rollout for Astroworld as well, they took that golden head or that golden face of Travis Scott and put it all over in these different cities and different countries for the promo campaign, which again, to me, kind of creeps me out because it's almost like it's a portal for demons to be hitting these different cities. You know, that's just me being maybe a little paranoid, a little skeptical, but just that thought alone of what it represents and what it represents in Harrowing going to hell. And David LaChapelle's history of perverting the gospel doesn't make it seem that far-fetched. Now, honestly, I could probably create a whole video about Travis Scott, his music videos, the imagery that's in them, the themes being communicated, but I don't have time to do that. And I really wanted to get this video out as soon as possible because I think this is an important thing to talk about. So let's get to the real crux of this entire video, which is the Astroworld concert. Now, just to recap, what we know so far about Astroworld, today is November 7th, is that 8 people have died and 300 plus people have been injured at this concert. There's also been some signs that people have been injected with fentanyl or that people have gone into cardiac arrest. 2 teenagers, I guess, passed away. And from what I understand right now at this moment, nobody really died by being trampled or stampeded. On top of that, we do have some footage from the actual event where people are being carried out. So it seems to me that there wasn't a stampede that resulted in these people dying or actually passing away. Now, as we actually look at the concert itself and the promotion of it, I want to look into every specific aspect of it, including the promotion of it. So one of the things that was really pushed very hard for this festival was that Astroworld was going to be a portal to another dimension. Now, whether that's figuratively or literally, which I think there might be a literal sense in that, we see that this is plastered all over the promotional materials. So for example, in this case, it says, open your eyes to a whole new universe. There's also a ton of use of different eyes in all of the promotional materials, eyes in the center of the hands, which kind of reminds me of Pan's Labyrinth a little bit. But this idea that you are going to be transported, you're going into a portal, into a new universe, into a new place. There's even some imagery that says, see you on the other side when it comes to the promotional materials and the actual concert itself. The stage design as well is literally set up on stage with a giant portal in the middle. There's concentric rings that kind of lead down into this, what looks like to be a portal. And this is the main stage for the entire event. Not to mention there's fire going everywhere. There's lots of red lights, and there's moments on the stage, which is kind of like covered in mountains, where eyes are all over those mountains in the middle of the stage while this performance is happening. What's interesting them about hitting on this portal concept over and over and over, and again tying that Astroworld concept where if you go in the front of it, you're walking through Travis Scott's mouth into this event. The reason I want to hit on that over and over and over is because we just passed, not even maybe 7 days ago, Halloween. Now, I can go into a whole video about Halloween and all the origins of it, and I'm going to try and condense that a little bit right now. But simply put, Halloween was originally a celebration called Samhain, and I might be pronouncing that wrong, but it's S-A-M-H-A-I-N. And during this period of time, from the 31st until now, there's this belief in Celtic and old ancient religions, which are still celebrated today by Wiccans and warlords today, literally today. If you go on Instagram, for example, and type in Samhain, you're going to see a ton of people posting about it, right? And it's still going on today. And I even screenshotted one just for the sake of this presentation. But what they believe is that over the course of the 31st to the 1st is the peak opportunity when the portal between this world, and the other world is weakened and people can pass through. This is literally the belief. And it also is the belief that the 3 and 4 concentric following days are opportunities for demons or for otherworldly spirits to come into our world. This is a literal belief that's shared. So with that concept in mind, what does this have to do, and what's kind of the tie-in of all of this? When I look at this, and so many times I've seen it, whether it's with Lil Dicky, Madonna, The Weeknd, or even Travis Scott at Astroworld, these artists will go up on these stages, these huge stages, people essentially praising them and worshiping them, and they'll denounce Christ or denounce the things that are of Christ. And what that looks like to me is an altar. So when I see this concert happening with all this symbolism about the portal going to be opened, you're going to go into a new universe, it's set up in such a way, you have eyes all across it, and then you have people dying at this concert, I can't help that think there was some kind of sacrifice made at this altar. I'm not pointing the finger at Travis Scott or the people that put on the event, nothing like that, but rather I'm kind of acknowledging the incredible eeriness and the incredible satanic underlying themes of this spiritual war that's going on, that people are literally being killed and potentially being presented as a sacrifice on the altar to this event. I think one of the most important scriptures I could acknowledge right now is how Israel, when they went to Mount Sinai, actually burst out and worshiped a golden calf, which they created with their own hands, and what that worship actually looked like. So let's take a second to read this. This is Exodus 32:15. And Moses turned and went down from the mountain and had the 2 tablets of the testimony were in his hand, the tablets both written on the side, and one on the other was written. Now the tablets were the work of God, and the writing was God engraved on the tablets. This is verse 17. And when Josh heard the noise of the people as they shouted, he said to Moses, there is a noise of war in the camp. But he said, it is not the noise of the shout of victory, nor the noise of cry of defeat, but the sound of singing that I hear. So it was as he came near the camp, he saw the calf and the dancing. So Moses' anger became hot, and he cast the tablets out of his hand, and they broke at the foot of the mountain. Then he took the golden calf which they made, and burned it with fire, and ground it to powder, and made it into the water, and made the children of Israel drink it. So you can see right here that worship, dancing, was tied into false worship to this golden calf. Now, when I look at a concert like this, when I look at the themes, when I look at this idea that a portal is going to be opened, when I look at Travis Scott on stage, I can't help but think that this is a form of worship, or not even think that it's a form of worship, but acknowledge that it's a form of worship. That gentleman I was talking about earlier who made that post, he was taking down a poster of Travis Scott, and in a later post said, the idols need to come down. I was idolizing this person, and the idols need to come down. I want to read another scripture about sacrifices as well on altars to pagan gods. This is Deuteronomy 32:17. They sacrificed unto devils, not to God, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that newly came up, whom your fathers feared not. Now, when we look at everything, I'm not making an accusation again, but what if we looked at this and in total, we are seeing a concert that is turned into a sacrificial system, whether by intention or not, but by the spiritual war that's going on, where souls are being offered literally at the high point of what could be called this softening of the portal and this celebration of Samhain. I don't think that it's coincidence. I don't think that it's by mistake or by accident. And the nature of the people dying and how they died and the circumstances leading up to it, to me, indicate very clearly that there was some sort of demonic force at work here. The one thing I always want to communicate is that the people involved might not even know what they're doing. You may be a part of God's plan and not be aware of it, in the same way that you might be participating in a demonic plan and not be aware of it. All we know right now is that this concert yielded people passing away, and everything that went around the concert had heavy occult themes. And we know Travis Scott, based on his history, based on his music, and based on the people that he's worked with, doesn't have a fear of God in him, which can only lead me to believe that he's either participating or involved in something else outside of the realm of God. If you're not with God, you are against God. It's as simple as that. And I hate to cast an accusation that he would be involved in this. I don't necessarily think that he is. But as we end this video, there's one thing I really want to share, and it's probably the most skin crawling thing of this entire video and why I feel it was so important to release this. I don't know if Travis Scott, he's on stage, maybe he can't see very well, but in this clip, it looks to me that Travis Scott is on stage looking down at the crowd, and you see a boy, a young guy, being lifted up by these people. He's clearly dead or passed out or unconscious at the very least, and Travis Scott is just singing while this dead body is being carried on top of the crowd. I'm gonna play that clip right now. For me, that was one of the craziest clips I'd seen in a really long time, and very kind of traumatic in a lot of ways. I think one of the main things to take away from this video as I wrap up here is that there's a war for your soul, whether you know it or not, and there's a spiritual war happening all around us. The media that we take in and the entertainment and the music that we listen to, it's not just music, it's not just entertainment. And as much as we like to think that oftentimes these people that are making this content don't have sinister motives, and maybe they very well don't have sinister motives, but they could be being used by forces outside of their awareness and being persuaded to do things by people within their circle in very serious ways. So while we might feel young and we might think that we have all the time in the world to repent and turn to God, keep in mind that 2 of these people that passed away were teenagers. And I pray for them. I pray for their families. It is not a thing I relish in even saying, but when you think about where we're at in the world and in Earth's history and the forces that are at work, we don't have any time to waste. And I think now is the perfect opportunity to give our lives to Christ. Surrendering your life to Christ, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever should believe on him will have eternal life. That's a free gift offered freely to anybody who would believe. Now, I hope that while this video was informative and educational, it does inspire action. It's great to learn about this stuff. It's great to know about this stuff. But if you just know it for the sake of knowing it and don't take action on it, it's useless. I encourage you to learn more about Christ, what he did for us on the cross, what he did for you on the cross, and how you can claim that gift of everlasting life, that free gift, that abundant gift, that gift that we could receive with joy, and turn to him and uncover the blessings and the storehouse of blessings which he has for you. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please share this with somebody who might be curious about what happened at Astroworld, the themes and ideas behind it, and that they could potentially be moved in a major way to start digging deeper into spiritual topics and uncover the true light of Christ. Thanks again for watching. Please be sure to like, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, share this with somebody who could be impacted and touched. And with that, let's together light up Babylon. God bless.